Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making probably one of my favorite things in the world. It definitely is my favorite thing in the world. Who am I kidding? Uh, Fresh pasta. You only need two ingredients to make this, which is pretty awesome. You're going to need flour and egg. I'm using a 00 flour, which is a finer milled flour. You're going to get a nice silky pasta with that. But if you only have all-purpose flour, that's just fine too. I weigh everything out when I make pasta. I highly recommend getting a scale. This is a 55% hydration, which means if you have 100 grams of flour, you're going to need 55 grams of egg. If you don't have a scale and you don't have access to one, it's roughly going to be about 2 eggs per cup of flour. Um, each egg roughly weighs about 50 grams once you crack it open. And we're going to make a well. You could also do this in the bowl, but I like to do it the old school way. You make a well and you put the egg in there, and then you're just going to start to whisk it with a fork, slowly incorporating the flour. And once it gets incorporated enough, you can start to get your hands a little bit dirty here, which is kind of a fun part. And we're just going to start incorporating the rest of the flour into this dough and starting to knead it. Um, at first, it might seem a little too sticky, and then maybe a little too dry, and then maybe even a little too sticky again. But if you just keep working it, eventually it's going to soak up all that flour, and it'll be the perfect consistency. If after a long period it is too dry and you're not getting all that flour, or a little too wet, you can always incorporate a tiny bit of water or extra flour if need be. But basically, we want to knead this for about 5-10 minutes to the point where we're developing a lot of gluten in this, which you want, and it should be, as you see there, a little bit spongy when you poke it. And then we're just going to wrap this up in saran wrap and let it sit for about 45 minutes. And after it's been sitting for that period of time where basically the gluten has started to develop, we're ready to roll this out. I have the KitchenAid attachment. A lot of the times I like to roll it out with a mozzarella or rolling pin, but for purposes of this video, I figured if you have a KitchenAid or any sort of pasta rolling machine, it makes it super easy. As you can see, you're going to start with the whitest setting, and we want to roll this through the pasta machine twice on each setting. After rolling the pasta through the largest setting twice and then moving on to the second setting, I like to actually fold the pasta on top of itself and run it through the machine, which creates this sort of circle. And then you can continue to do 2 circles and then lower the setting to a thinner setting and a thinner setting for a little bit. This helps make it a little bit more uniform to where you're not wasting as much pasta. And then you can eventually cut it um, as I'm doing here. Once it gets to a certain length, I like to actually take it out of the machine and cut it in half. This makes it a little bit more manageable once it keeps getting thinner and thinner to run it through the machine. Otherwise, you can end up with several feet of pasta and it can be kind of a pain to roll through the machine. Eventually, you're going to get to the second to smallest setting on the pasta machine, and that's where we're going to stop for making tagliatelle today. I think it's the perfect thinness for that type of pasta, and at that point, you're just going to cut it into about 18-inch length for pasta sheets. I think that's a good thickness, and you're just going to put a little flour on top of it and let it sit for a little while to dehydrate a little bit so it's easier to cut. I'm using semolina flour here, which is a little coarser flour, which won't actually soak into the pasta itself, which is good. That'll eventually just fall right off. But any type of flour that you have on hand should work just fine. Its purpose is just to make sure that it doesn't stick when you're rolling it up and you cut it. Once the pasta is rolled up all the way, as you can see here, you're going to want the seam at the top. That's so when you're done cutting it to your preferred width, you can just hold on to that little flap and the pasta should come undone rather seamlessly, as long as it was dehydrated enough or you floured it good enough to where it rolls apart, as you can see here, rather seamlessly. Once you finish rolling out of the pasta, you can either eat it right away. It's going to take about 30 seconds to a minute to cook. It cooks rather quick, so keep that in mind. Or you can put it in the fridge for a couple days, maybe 2 to 3 days, or freeze it and it should last a long time and just cook it for an extra maybe minute or so. But that's how you make fresh pasta, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this. It was super fun for me to do, considering it's one of my favorite things in the world to make. If you liked it, give us a like and comment on how your pasta turned out. See you guys next time.